My sister got pregnant by my fiancé, and my family decided to defend her because she was the miracle baby. So I got my revenge in the cruelest way possible. I didn't just leave, I became their landlord. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. I watched the condensation drip down the side of my crystal water glass, focusing on that single droplet so I wouldn't have to look at the train wreck sitting across from me. We were at the Aviary, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. The kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices and the lighting is designed to make everyone look beautiful. But no amount of ambient lighting could hide the desperation on my father's face or the sheer, unadulterated smugness radiating from my sister, Tiffany. It had been 4 years since I had sat at a table with these people. 4 years since I had looked into the eyes of the man who was supposed to be my husband, Brandon, who was now sitting next to my sister, looking like a man marching to the gallows. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He kept fidgeting with his napkin, his cheap suit jacket straining at the buttons. He'd gained weight. They all looked worn. My mother's hair was dyed a harsh, box dye black that made her skin look gray. My father's hands shook slightly as he reached for the bread basket, likely because he knew he couldn't afford even the appetizers here. My husband, Patrick, squeezed my hand under the table. His grip was warm, solid, and grounding. A reminder that I wasn't that pathetic girl anymore. I was Meredith freaking Miller, the CFO of a major tech firm, and I was wearing a diamond on my finger that cost more than Brandon made in 3 years. So, my mother, Linda, started, her voice shrill in the quiet elegance of the room. You look expensive, Meredith. I look successful, Mom, I corrected gently, taking a sip of my wine. There's a difference. Tiffany snorted. She was tearing into a roll of bread like she hadn't eaten in days. She looked messy. Her blouse was wrinkled, and there was a frantic energy about her. Success isn't everything, Meredith. Some of us have real lives. Real families. I saw Patrick stiffen beside me. We had agreed to come to this dinner because my father, Robert, had begged. He said my mother missed me. He said life was too short for grudges. He said they wanted to make amends. But I knew better. I knew this wasn't about love. It was about the fact that the rumor mill in our hometown said I had made partner, and suddenly, the daughter they threw away was worth knowing again. We have a real family, Patrick said, his voice calm but with a dangerous edge. Meredith and I are very happy. Tiffany laughed, a cruel, wet sound. She leaned forward, placing her elbows on the table, invading my space. Happy? Really? Because I heard through Aunt Sarah that you guys have been having trouble. You know. In the baby department. The air left the room. My chest tightened. It was the one wound that hadn't healed, the one crack in my armor. We had been trying for 2 years. 2 years of negative tests, of hormone injections, of heartbreak. Tiffany, my father warned, but it was weak. He didn't stop her. He never stopped her. I'm just saying, Tiffany continued, her eyes gleaming with malice. She placed a hand on her stomach. It was round. It must be hard. Wanting something you can't have? Especially when I just look at a man and get pregnant. This is number 3, by the way. Another boy. We're so blessed. She looked at Brandon, who flinched. Brandon just has such strong swimmers. But I guess you wouldn't know about that, would you, Meredith? Since he left you before you could find out. I felt the blood roar in my ears. I looked at my mother. She was looking down at her plate, avoiding my eyes. She wasn't going to defend me. She never defended me. She was letting Tiffany weaponize my infertility, just like she let her steal my fiancé 4 years ago. Tiffany wasn't done. She turned her gaze to Patrick, licking her lips in a way that was meant to be seductive but just looked grotesque. You know, Patrick, if you ever get tired of waiting for damaged goods, you know where to find me. I'm clearly very fertile. Maybe I could help you out. Surrogacy? Or the old-fashioned way? Patrick's grip on my hand was bone-crushing now. He was about to explode. But I squeezed back, signaling him to wait. This wasn't his fight. It was mine. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a hot, screaming snap. It was cold. It was ice. It was the calculated precision of a woman who manages multi-million-dollar portfolios for a living. I looked at Tiffany. I looked at the grease stain on her shirt. I looked at Brandon's sweating forehead. I looked at my parents, who were complicit in every second of my misery. You think that's funny, Tiffany? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but it carried across the table like a gunshot. I'm just making conversation, she smirked. Don't be so sensitive. God, you're still such a buzzkill. No, I said, standing up. The chair scraped against the floor, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. I didn't care. I reached into my designer tote bag. I didn't pull out a tissue. I didn't pull out a wallet. I pulled out a thick, manila folder. I tossed it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy thud, knocking over the salt shaker. I didn't come here to eat, I said, looking down at them. I came here because I wanted to see if there was a single shred of humanity left in any of you. If maybe, just maybe, you were actually sorry. But you're not. You're just broke. My father's face went pale. Meredith, please. Sit down. I'm done sitting down, Dad. And I'm done being the victim. I pointed a manicured finger at the folder. Open it. If you are listening to this and you've ever had someone smirk at your pain, if you've ever wanted to wipe the smile off a bully's face, do me a favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below. Let me know you're with me, that you're ready to see justice served. Your support is the fuel that keeps me going. Comment 1 right now, because what happens next is going to be the most satisfying moment of my life. To understand why I threw that folder on the table, and why it was filled with legal documents that would ruin their lives, you have to understand the history. You have to understand that in the Miller household, there were 2 classes of citizens, the miracle and the help. I was the help. I was born when my parents were young and struggling. My childhood wasn't bad, but it was functional. I had clothes, I had food, but I didn't have attention. My parents were too busy working double shifts to pay the mortgage. I learned early on to be quiet, to be self-sufficient, to make my own peanut butter sandwiches and walk myself to school. I was the easy child. The one they didn't have to worry about. Then, when I was 11, everything changed. My mother, who had suffered 3 miscarriages after having me and had been told she would never carry another child, got pregnant at 42. It was treated like the second coming of Christ. From the moment the stick turned pink, Linda stopped being a person and became a vessel for the miracle. My father, Robert, treated her like glass. And when Tiffany was born, the world stopped turning. She was a colicky, demanding baby, but to them, her screams were symphonies. Because my parents were older now, and more financially stable, Tiffany got everything I never did. She didn't get hand-me-downs, she got boutique dresses. She didn't get a public school education, she got private tutors. But the worst part wasn't the stuff. It was the expectations. Meredith, watch your sister. Meredith, give that toy to Tiffany, she's crying. Meredith, you're the older sister, you need to understand. I became the built-in babysitter, the third parent, the scapegoat for every tantrum Tiffany threw. If Tiffany broke a vase, it was my fault for not watching her. If Tiffany failed a math test, it was my fault for not tutoring her enough. I remember my 16th birthday clearly. I had asked for a car, nothing fancy, just a used Honda so I could drive myself to my part-time job and stop taking the bus. My parents sat me down with solemn faces. "We can't afford a car right now, Meredith," my dad said, looking pained. "We have to prioritize Tiffany's dance academy tuition. It's very expensive, and she has a real gift." I accepted it. I swallowed the disappointment like I always did. I took the bus. I worked at the grocery store. I saved every penny. 5 years later, on Tiffany's 16th birthday, I drove home from college to visit. There, sitting in the driveway with a giant red bow on top, was a brand new convertible Mustang. "Happy birthday, princess," my father shouted, filming Tiffany as she screamed and jumped up and down. I stood on the porch, holding the cheap textbook I had bought used because my parents couldn't help with my tuition that semester. My stomach dropped. It wasn't about the money. We clearly had money. It was about where the money went. I thought we couldn't afford a car. I asked my mother later in the kitchen, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother didn't even look up from the cake she was frosting. "Oh, stop it, Meredith. Don't be jealous. It's ugly. Tiffany needs a safe car. She's delicate. Besides, you're so capable. You always figure things out." That was the curse of my life. I was capable. Therefore, I was invisible. I graduated college with honors and a mountain of student loans. I didn't get a graduation party because Tiffany had a gymnastics recital the same weekend, and we can't be in two places at once, Meredith. They chose the recital. I moved to the city, got a job as a junior accountant, and started climbing the ladder. I thought if I became successful enough, if I made enough money, they would finally look at me with the same awe they reserved for Tiffany. I was wrong. Money didn't buy their respect, it only bought their expectation. As soon as I started making a decent salary, the phone calls started. Not to ask how I was, but to ask for loans. Tiffany needs braces. Tiffany crashed the Mustang, the insurance deductible is high. Tiffany needs money for a modeling portfolio. And I paid. I paid because I was desperate for them to love me. I paid because every time I wrote a check, my mother would say, "Oh, thank you, Meredith. You're such a good big sister." Those words were like a drug. I was addicted to being the good one, even as it drained my bank account dry. I didn't realize I was setting a precedent. I was teaching them that I was a resource, not a person. And resources are meant to be mined until they are empty. But the ultimate resource extraction wasn't money. It was Brandon. I met Brandon when I was 24. He was charming, funny, and seemed to adore me. He was a sales manager at a logistics company. He wasn't rich, but he was ambitious. Or so I thought. I brought him home for Thanksgiving. Tiffany was 19 then. She was in her party girl phase, flunking out of community college and living rent-free in my parents' basement. When Brandon walked in, Tiffany looked him up and down like he was a steak dinner. "Hi," she purred, twirling a strand of blonde hair. "I'm the fun sister." I should have seen the red flags then. I should have seen the way Brandon's eyes lingered on her. But I was wearing rose-colored glasses, so thick I was practically blind. I thought I finally had something that was just mine. I had no idea that I was just preparing another gift for the miracle child. By the time I was 27, I had passed my CPA exams and landed a senior role at a prestigious firm. I was making 6 figures. I felt like I had made it. But my bank account didn't reflect my success. My bank account looked like a sieve, and my family was the water rushing through it. I became the Bank of Meredith. It started small. My mom would call, voice trembling. "The furnace broke, Meredith. It's going to be freezing tonight." Tiffany has a cold. So, I paid for a new HVAC system. $6,000. Then it was Tiffany's emergencies. She got a DUI. She can't have a record, Meredith. It will ruin her future. My dad pleaded. So, I paid for the lawyer. $3,500. Then it was Tiffany's rent when she decided she wanted to move to the city to find herself. My parents couldn't afford the city rent, so they guilt-tripped me. She needs to be close to you, Meredith. You can watch over her. So, I co-signed the lease. And inevitably, when Tiffany forgot to pay rent for 3 months, I paid that too. $4,000. But the biggest leech attached to my wallet wasn't my sister. It was my fiancé, Brandon. We had been together for 3 years. We moved in together into a nice condo I bought, in my name, thank God, though he threw a fit about not being on the deed. It feels like you don't trust me, he had argued, giving me the silent treatment for days. It's just smart financial planning, I had insisted, standing my ground for once. Brandon was comfortable. He liked the lifestyle I provided. He liked the nice dinners, the vacations to Cabo, the designer watches I bought him for birthdays. But he never seemed to have his wallet when the check came. Babe, I left my card in my gym bag. Meredith, can you cover this? My commission check is late. It's all the same money eventually, right? Since we're getting married. I rationalized it. I made more money than him. It was fair for me to pay more, right? That's what partners do. Then Brandon lost his job. He said he was let go due to restructuring. I found out later he was fired for incompetence and time theft. But at the time, I was supportive. Don't worry, I told him, hugging him while he moped on my Italian leather sofa. I'll cover everything until you get back on your feet. That period lasted 8 months. 8 months of me working 60-hour weeks while Brandon sat at home playing video games and networking. I even used my professional connections to get him an interview at a client's distribution center. I stuck my neck out for him. You have to nail this, Brandon, I told him the night before the interview. My reputation is on the line. Relax, Mare. I got this, he said, barely looking up from his phone. He got the job. A warehouse manager position. It paid decent money, but more importantly, it got him out of the house. I thought things were looking up. We got engaged that Christmas. The ring was beautiful. I cried. I didn't know until months later that he had put it on my emergency credit card that I kept in the desk drawer. I literally paid for my own engagement ring. When I confronted him, he laughed it off. I wanted to surprise you, but I didn't have the liquidity right then. I was going to pay you back. Why do you have to ruin the romance with math? Ruin the romance with math. That was his favorite line. I started planning the wedding. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted, for once in my life, to be the center of attention. I booked a stunning botanical garden estate. I hired the best florist. I bought a Vera Wang dress that made me feel like a queen. My parents were thrilled, but predictably, they couldn't contribute a dime. Things are tight with the house, Meredith, my dad said, avoiding eye contact. And we're helping Tiffany with her medical bills. What medical bills? I asked. Tiffany looked healthy as a horse. Oh, just women troubles, my mom waved it off. I didn't press. I paid for the venue. I paid for the catering. I paid for the band. $40,000 of my hard-earned savings. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was stressed but happy. The invitations were out. The RSVPs were coming in. Even Tiffany seemed to be behaving. She had agreed to be my maid of honor, which shocked me. She had been surprisingly helpful lately, always coming over to the condo to help Brandon with wedding errands while I was at work. "You're working so hard, sis," Tiffany would say, texting me from my own living room. "Don't worry, Brandon and I are handling the tasting menu selection today." I thought it was sweet. I thought we were finally bonding. I thought maybe, just maybe, growing up and getting married was bridging the gap between us. I was so stupid. I came home early one Tuesday because I had a migraine. I walked into the condo. It was quiet. I saw Tiffany's purse on the counter. I smiled, thinking she had dropped by to surprise me. I walked toward the bedroom, intending to lie down. The door was slightly ajar. I heard giggling. Low, intimate giggling. I pushed the door open. They weren't in bed together. That would have been too cliché. They were sitting on the edge of the bed. Tiffany was holding up two ties, a blue one and a gray one. Brandon was sitting there, shirtless, looking at her with an expression I had never seen him direct at me. It was pure adoration. "The blue one brings out your eyes," Tiffany whispered, leaning in close to him. Too close. Brandon reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're the only one who really gets me, Tiff." I cleared my throat. They jumped apart like they had been electrocuted. "Meredith," Brandon stammered, grabbing a shirt. You're home early." "Just helping with the groom's attire," Tiffany chirped, her face flushing pink but her eyes defiant. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. My intuition was screaming at me. But I was tired. I was medicated for the migraine. And I was 3 weeks away from a wedding I had paid $40,000 for. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. So I let them lie to me. "Thanks, Tiff," I said, rubbing my temples. "I'm going to take a nap in the guest room." I closed the door. But the seed of doubt had been planted. And 3 days later, at the family dinner, that seed would bloom into a carnivorous plant that would swallow my entire life. It was a Thursday night. My parents had invited us over for a pre-wedding family dinner. The atmosphere was weird from the moment I walked in. Usually, my mother would be bustling around the kitchen, and my dad would be watching TV. But tonight, the TV was off. They were sitting in the living room, hands clasped, looking like they were waiting for a funeral procession. Brandon had arrived separately, coming straight from work. He wouldn't look at me. He went straight to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a double scotch. Tiffany was sitting in the armchair, wearing an oversized sweater, her knees pulled up to her chest. She had a strange look on her face, half terrified, half triumphant. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, putting down the bottle of wine I had brought. "You guys are acting like someone died." "Sit down, Meredith," my father said. His voice was heavy. I sat on the sofa. Brandon remained standing by the fireplace, swirling his drink. "We need to talk," my mother said, wringing her hands. "Tiffany has some news." I looked at my sister. "Did you lose your job again? Did you get evicted?" "Just tell me how much it is, Tiffany." "I have my checkbook." That was my reflex. Solve it with money. Fix the problem so we can go back to pretending we're a functional family. "It's not money," Tiffany said softly. She lowered her legs and sat up straight. She looked at Brandon, then back at me. "I'm pregnant." I blinked. "Oh. Wow. Okay. Who is the father? Is it that DJ you were seeing? Or the guy from the gym?" The room went silent. A thick, suffocating silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the other room. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I looked at Brandon. He was staring at the floor, his face a mask of misery. Brandon? I said. It was a question, but I already knew the answer. My brain just refused to process it. Tell her, Tiffany said, her voice gaining strength. She looked at Brandon demandingly. Brandon took a giant gulp of scotch. Meredith. We didn't mean for this to happen. The world tilted on its axis. We? Tiffany and I, Brandon mumbled. We've been seeing each other. Seeing each other? I repeated, my voice sounding tinny and far away. How long? 6 months, Tiffany blurted out. She placed her hand on her stomach, a protective, possessive gesture. We've been in love for 6 months. 6 months. While I was paying his rent. While I was planning our wedding. While I was helping him get a job. While Tiffany was coming over to help me. You're lying, I whispered. I was just with you guys on Tuesday. You were picking out ties. We were saying goodbye, Brandon said, finally looking at me. His eyes were wet, but I saw no remorse, only self-pity. I tried to break it off, Meredith. I wanted to do the right thing by you. But then we found out about the baby. The baby is a miracle, my mother interjected suddenly. She looked up, her eyes shining with tears. After everything Tiffany has been through, a baby is a blessing. I stared at her. A blessing? Mom, she's pregnant with my fiancé's child. 3 weeks before my wedding. Are you insane? Don't yell at your mother, my father snapped. This is a difficult situation for everyone. For everyone? I stood up, shaking. I'm the one being betrayed here. My sister has been sleeping with my future husband in my own house. We couldn't help it. Tiffany cried out, standing up too. We have a connection, Meredith. You wouldn't understand. You and Brandon, it was always a business arrangement. You treated him like an employee. I treat him like a man. I treated him like a partner. I screamed. I paid for everything. I put clothes on his back. Exactly. Brandon shouted, his face turning red. You emasculated me. You always had to be the boss, the big shot CFO. With Tiffany, she needs me. She looks up to me. She makes me feel like I matter. I felt bile rise in my throat. He cheated on me because I was too successful. Because I didn't play the damsel in distress for his fragile ego. So that's it? I looked around the room. You're choosing her? She's carrying my child, Meredith, Brandon said, stepping closer to Tiffany and putting an arm around her. It was a visual claim. They were a unit now. I was the outsider. And she's your sister, my mother added, her voice pleading. We have to handle this as a family. We can't have a scandal. People will talk. People will talk? I laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. You think I care if people talk? Meredith, sit down, my father commanded. We have to discuss the logistics. Logistics? The wedding, my mother said. It's in 3 weeks. Everything is paid for. The vendors, the venue, it's all non-refundable. I narrowed my eyes. So? Cancel it. I'm obviously not marrying him. My mother took a deep breath. She exchanged a look with my father. A look of conspiracy. Well, she began, smoothing her skirt. Since everything is already arranged, and since Tiffany and Brandon are going to have a baby, and they love each other. She trailed off, but I understood. I understood the depths of their depravity in that moment. No, I whispered. You have got to be kidding me. It would be a waste of money to cancel, my dad said pragmatically. And Tiffany, she deserves a nice day. She's going to be a mother. We were thinking we could just change the name on the invitations. It's the same family. Most of the guests are our friends anyway. They wanted to give my wedding to her. They wanted me to hand over the dress, the flowers, the venue, the dream, to the woman who stole my life. Because she was pregnant. Because she was the miracle. And I was just the financier. I looked at them. Really looked at them. And for the first time in my life, the fog cleared. I didn't see my parents. I didn't see my sister. I saw vampires. Get out, I said to Brandon. I'm going home. And if you're not out of my condo by midnight, I'm calling the police. Meredith, be reasonable, my mother cried. I turned and walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I just walked. But as I walked to my car, my knees gave out, and I vomited into my mother's prize-winning hydrangeas. The 2 weeks following that dinner were a blur of lawyers, locks, and psychological warfare. I changed the locks on my condo that night. Brendan banged on the door for an hour, shouting that his stuff was inside. I packed his PlayStation, his clothes, and his collection of stupid hats into garbage bags and left them on the curb. It rained that night. I watched from the window as the water soaked into the cardboard boxes. I felt nothing. But the real battle wasn't with Brandon. It was with my parents. They didn't call to check on me. They didn't call to apologize. They called to negotiate for Tiffany. Meredith, please, my mother left a voicemail. Tiffany loves the venue. It's her dream location. You know we can't afford to book a new place on such short notice. Just sign the transfer papers. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. The mantra of my existence. It's code for, let us abuse you and don't complain. When I didn't respond, they showed up at my office. My father, standing in the lobby of my firm, looking like a disappointed patriarch. You're being petty, he told me when I came down to meet him. It's just a party, Meredith. You can get married anytime. You have your career. Tiffany, this is her one shot. She's 6 months pregnant. Do you want her to get married at the courthouse like a nobody? She is a nobody, Dad, I said coldly. And she's a thief. I paid $40,000 for that wedding. It's my money. I'd rather burn the venue to the ground than let her walk down my aisle. We'll pay you back, he lied. Once I get my pension sorted, we'll pay you back every cent. You still owe me for the HVAC system, Dad. And Tiffany's DUI lawyer. You're never going to pay me back. He stiffened. Is that all we are to you? Debts? We're your family. We defended you when you were difficult as a child. We raised you. You raised a bank account, I corrected. Go home. But they didn't stop. They knew my weakness. They knew I hated public scenes. So they went behind my back. I got a call from the wedding planner, Jessica. Hi, Meredith, she sounded confused. I just got off the phone with your mother. She said you authorized the name change on the contracts? Replacing Meredith with Tiffany? I just need your verbal confirmation since the credit card is in your name. My blood ran cold. They had impersonated me. Or at least, lied about my consent. I did not authorize that, I said, my voice shaking. Cancel everything, Jessica. The catering, the flowers, the DJ. Cancel it all. Meredith, wait, Jessica sighed. If you cancel now, within the 14-day window, you lose 100% of the deposits. You get nothing back. If you let them use it, maybe they can pay you? I held the phone. $40,000. It was a down payment on a house. It was a year's salary for some people. If I cancelled, the money was gone. Vaporized. But if I let them have it? If I let Tiffany wear a white dress, which she definitely didn't qualify for, in the garden I chose, eating the cake I tasted, dancing to the song I picked, with the man I loved? The thought made me physically ill. But then, I had a thought. A dark, twisted thought. Let them have it. Let them have the wedding. Let them play happy family. Let them start their marriage on a foundation of theft and lies. Because I knew Brandon. I knew he had no money. I knew my parents were broke. If they had this wedding, they would feel like royalty for one night. And then reality would hit. And when it did, I wouldn't be there to bail them out. Fine, I told Jessica. Let them use the venue. But cancel the open bar. And downgrade the menu to the chicken option. No steak. No lobster. Okay. Jessica said, sensing the malice. And the flowers? Keep the flowers. But change the lilies to carnations. Cheap ones. I hung up. I didn't tell my parents. I just stopped fighting. They took my silence for submission. They thought they had won. My mother sent me a text the next day. Thank you, sweetie. I knew you'd come around. We're so relieved. We'll save a seat for you at the head table. The audacity was breathtaking. They actually expected me to attend. To sit there and smile while my sister married my ex-fiancé. I didn't reply. I had a different plan. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. On Friday, June 14th, I packed my car. I put my condo on the market. I requested a transfer to my firm's Chicago office, which they granted immediately because I was their top performer. I wasn't just leaving the condo. I was leaving the state. I was leaving the life I had built. I stood in my empty living room one last time. The place where Brandon and I had watched movies. The place where Tiffany had seduced him. It felt haunted. I left my key on the counter. I didn't leave a note. They didn't deserve words. The drive to Chicago was 6 hours. I left at 5 a.m. on the day of the wedding. My phone started blowing up around 10 a.m. That's when the bridesmaids, who were mostly Tiffany's friends anyway, probably realized I wasn't coming to the salon for hair and makeup, not that I was supposed to be the bride anymore, but my mother had delusionally assumed I would be a bridesmaid. Mom, where are you? The photographer is here. Dad, Meredith, stop being dramatic. Get here. Tiffany, don't ruin my day, bitch. I watched the notifications pop up on my dashboard screen. Each one felt like a little mosquito bite. Annoying, but not fatal. At noon, as I crossed the state line into Illinois, I pulled into a rest stop. I bought a bad coffee and sat on the hood of my car. Right now, they were walking down the aisle. Brandon was standing there, probably sweating in a tuxedo I had bought him 3 months ago. Tiffany was walking toward him, carrying a bouquet of cheap carnations, her belly swelling with the proof of their betrayal. I imagined the whispers. The guests looking around for me. The awkwardness when the priest asked, "Who gives this woman?" and my father handed over his favorite daughter to a man who couldn't pay his own car insurance. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. I opened my phone settings. I went to contacts. Mom, block. Dad, block. Tiffany, block. Brandon, block. Then I went to my banking app. I had already removed Brandon from everything, but I did one last check. I saw a pending charge on my old joint account, a charge for luxury limousine service. Brandon had tried to use the old debit card number one last time to get a limo for the wedding. Transaction declined. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had cracked in weeks. They were going to have to drive themselves in Tiffany's Mustang. Or maybe ask my dad for a ride. I got back in the car. As I merged onto the highway, the Chicago skyline appeared in the distance. It looked like a fortress of steel and glass. It looked cold. It looked hard. It looked exactly like what I needed to become. I promised myself then and there, the Meredith who paid for everyone else was dead. The Meredith who begged for love was buried back in Ohio. The new Meredith was going to be impenetrable. I arrived at my corporate housing in downtown Chicago just as the sun was setting. It was a sleek, modern apartment on the 40th floor. No hydrangeas. No memories. Just clean lines and a view of the lake. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the window. My phone was silent. My life was empty. It was terrifying. But it was also the first time I felt completely free. I didn't know then that freedom would be lonely. I didn't know that I would spend the next 2 years waking up from nightmares where I was screaming at my sister but no sound was coming out. But I also didn't know that I was about to build an empire. And that one day, that empire would be the weapon I used to destroy them. Chicago was a grinder. It chewed people up and spit them out. But I was already chewed up, so I fit right in. I threw myself into work with a ferocity that scared my colleagues. I was the first one in the office at 6 a.m. and the last one to leave at 9 p.m. I worked weekends. I worked holidays. When everyone else went home to their families for Thanksgiving, I stayed and audited the Q4 projections. Work was safe. Numbers didn't lie. Spreadsheets didn't cheat on you with your sister. Balance sheets always balanced if you did the work. My bosses noticed. Meredith, you're a machine, the senior partner told me 6 months in. We're putting you on the Sterling account. The Sterling account was the big league. High net worth individuals, complex estate planning, international tax shelters. It required a razor-sharp mind and zero emotional distractions. I was perfect for it. My salary doubled in the first year. Then it tripled. I didn't spend it on shoes or vacations. I invested. I studied the real estate market. I learned about distressed assets. I learned how to buy debt. I learned that in America, debt is a commodity, and if you own someone's debt, you own them. I bought my first investment property 2 years after moving. A duplex in a gentrifying neighborhood. I renovated it myself on weekends, tearing out drywall and smashing tiles with a sledgehammer. It was therapeutic. Every swing of the hammer was a blow to Brandon's face. Every wall I tore down was a wall of my parents' house. I rented it out for a massive profit. Then I bought another. And another. By the time I was 30, I was the youngest CFO in my firm's history. I bought a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and a security system that cost more than my parents' car. I was rich. Objectively, undeniably rich. But I was also a ghost. I didn't date. I didn't make friends. I had acquaintances, people I met at charity galas or board meetings. I wore tailored suits that acted as armor. I wore stilettos that clicked on the marble floors like weapons. I kept tabs on my family, of course. Not directly. I hired a private investigator once a year just to run a background check. I knew Tiffany and Brandon had a boy, Leo. I knew they were struggling. Brandon had bounced between 3 jobs. I knew they were living in my parents' basement for a while, then moved into a crappy rental. I knew my parents had taken out a second mortgage to help them. Every piece of bad news gave me a jolt of dark satisfaction. It was my drug. Schadenfreude. But it wasn't enough. Watching them fail from a distance was satisfying, but it didn't heal the hole in my chest. I was successful, but I was hollow. Then came the gala for the children's hospital. I almost didn't go. I hated these events. Forced socialization, bad champagne, rich people pretending to care about poor people. But my firm had bought a table, and as CFO, I had to show face. I was standing near the bar, checking my emails on my phone, radiating "don't talk to me" energy. "You look like you'd rather be getting a root canal," a voice said. I looked up. Standing there was a man. He wasn't classically handsome like Brandon. He had kind eyes, messy brown hair, and he was wearing a tuxedo that actually fit him perfectly. "I'd prefer the root canal," I said. "Less small talk." He laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh. "I'm Patrick. I'm hiding from my boss over by the shrimp cocktail." "Meredith." "Hiding from everyone." "Nice to meet you, Meredith. Can I buy you a drink? Or are you calculating the tax write-off for this event in your head?" I smiled. I actually smiled. "Both." We talked for 3 hours. We ignored the speeches. We ignored the auction. We just stood by the bar and talked. He was an intellectual property lawyer. He was smart. Witty. And he looked at me, not at my chest, not at my expensive jewelry, but at my eyes. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something thaw inside me. Dating Patrick was different. With Brendan, I always felt like I was dragging a sullen teenager uphill. With Patrick, it was like walking beside an equal. He didn't need my money. He had his own. He didn't need my connections. He was a partner at a top law firm. He didn't need me to fix him. He was already whole. But he was patient. He saw the walls I had built, and instead of trying to smash them down, he just waited at the gate. 6 months into dating, he asked the question I had been dreading. "Mare," he said over dinner at my place, "I've met your colleagues. I've met your tailor. I've even met your doorman. But I've never heard you mention your family. Do they live far away?" I put my fork down. The silence stretched. I had 2 choices: lie, or open the infected wound. I looked at Patrick. I looked at his hands, strong, capable hands that had held mine during panic attacks, that had cooked me dinner when I worked late. "I don't have a family," I said. He tilted his head. "Are they passed away?" "No," I took a sip of wine. "They're alive. They live in Ohio. But they're dead to me." And then, I told him. I told him everything. The miracle baby dynamic. The financial abuse. The wedding. The betrayal. The way my mother asked me to pay for the party where my sister married my fiancé. I expected him to tell me to let it go. To tell me that family is family. That forgiveness is divine. That's what everyone else said. But Patrick didn't say that. He listened. He grew quiet. His jaw tightened. When I finished, he reached across the table and took my hand. "They are monsters," he said. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. "You think so?" "Meredith, that is horrific. What they did to you isn't just bad parenting. It's abuse. It's emotional and financial predation." He looked me in the eye. "You survived a Shark Tank. And you came out and built a castle. You are the strongest woman I know." I started to cry. Ugly crying. For years of held-back tears came pouring out over a plate of risotto. Patrick just held me. He proposed a year later. No flash mob. No public spectacle. Just us, on a quiet beach in Maine, watching the sunrise. "I can't promise you a perfect life," he said, holding a vintage sapphire ring. "But I promise I will never, ever let anyone make you feel second best. With me, you are the priority. Always." We got married in Italy. Just us and 2 witnesses. No guests. No drama. It was perfect. For a while, life was blissful. We were the power couple of Chicago. We traveled. We worked. We laughed. Then, we decided to have a baby. We thought it would be easy. We were healthy. We were youngish. But month after month, the tests were negative. We went to specialists. We did tests. Unexplained infertility, the doctor said. Likely stress-related cortisol damage from prolonged trauma in your 20s. My past was reaching out to strangle my future. My body was remembering the trauma even when my mind had moved on. It was during this vulnerable time, when I was hopped up on hormones, emotionally raw, and desperate for a child, that my phone rang. It was a number I had blocked. But somehow, it came through as a restricted call. Hello? I answered. Meredith? It was my father. His voice sounded old. Broken. Dad? The word felt foreign in my mouth. I didn't think you'd answer, he stammered. Meredith, we need to talk. Your mother, she misses you. And, we're in trouble. Bad trouble. I should have hung up. I should have thrown the phone into the lake. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And deep down, a part of me, the dark, vindictive part, wanted to know exactly what kind of trouble they were in. I'm listening, I said. And that was how I ended up back in Ohio, sitting at the aviary, holding a folder that contained the deed to their house. The next 2 years of my life were a paradox. On paper, I was the envy of every woman in Chicago. I was the CFO of a company that had just gone public. I drove a Porsche Cayenne. My husband, Patrick, was named one of the top 40 lawyers under 40. We spent our anniversaries in Tuscany and our Christmases in Aspen. But behind the closed doors of our penthouse, there was a quiet, suffocating grief. Infertility is a thief. It doesn't just steal your future, it steals your present. It steals the intimacy from your marriage, turning lovemaking into a scheduled, clinical appointment. It steals your joy when you see a stranger with a stroller. It steals your dignity as you lie on an exam table, legs in stirrups, while a doctor discusses your follicle count like you're a piece of livestock. We tried everything. Clomid. IUI. And finally, IVF. If you've never done IVF, let me tell you, it is a full-time job. The bruising on my stomach from the injections looked like a map of my desperation. The mood swings from the hormones made me feel like I was losing my mind. I would go from weeping over a commercial to raging at a barista in the span of 5 minutes. Patrick was a saint. He mixed the medications. He gave me the shots when my hands were shaking too much to do it myself. He held my hair back when the side effects made me nauseous. We're a team, Mare, he would whisper at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. We'll get through this. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was the shame. I felt broken. I felt like my body, this machine that I had honed to be efficient, to work long hours, to run marathons, had fundamentally failed its primary biological function. And deep down, in the darkest corners of my mind, a voice whispered, "This is your punishment. This is karma for abandoning your family. You walked away from them, so now you don't get to have one of your own." It was irrational. It was toxic. But trauma doesn't care about logic. After our third failed round of IVF, I hit rock bottom. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, holding yet another negative pregnancy test. The stark whiteness of that little window felt like a judgment. Patrick found me there. He didn't say anything. He just sat down next to me on the cold tile, in his expensive suit, and pulled me into his lap. "I'm sorry," I sobbed into his chest. "I'm so sorry I can't give you this." "Stop," he said firmly, lifting my chin. "You are enough. Meredith, do you hear me? You are enough. We want a child, yes. But I married you. Not a uterus. I married Meredith Miller. And if it's just us for the rest of our lives, traveling the world and drinking expensive wine, then that is a damn good life. I clung to him. He was right. I had to stop letting my worth be defined by what I could produce, whether it was money for my parents or a baby for my husband. We decided to take a break. No doctors. No calendars. No injections. Just us, reclaiming our lives. It was during this fragile peace that the phone rang. I was in my office, reviewing the quarterly audit. My personal cell buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was 330. Ohio. My stomach dropped. I hadn't changed my number, a defiant move on my part, proving I wasn't hiding, but they had been blocked for years. This must be a new number. I let it go to voicemail. I stared at the blinking light on my phone for an hour. Finally, I picked it up and dialed into my voicemail. Meredith. It was my father. His voice sounded thin. Like paper. It's Dad. Look, I know. I know we haven't spoken. And I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But, things are bad here, honey. Your mom, she's sick with worry. And Tiffany. God, it's a mess. We're drowning, Meredith. They're going to take the house. Please. I'm begging you. Just call me back. They're going to take the house. The house I grew up in. The house where I was ignored. The house where I was the servant. My first instinct was to delete the message. Let it burn, I thought. Let them lose it all. But then, the CFO in me took over. The part of me that analyzed risk and opportunity. The part of me that managed distressed assets. Patrick, I said that night over dinner, playing the voicemail for him. He listened, his face impassive. He took a sip of his Cabernet. What do you want to do? I want to know if it's true, I said. I want to know if they're actually losing the house, or if this is just another scam to get me to pay for Tiffany's lifestyle. And if it is true? I looked at him, and a cold smile touched my lips. Then I see an investment opportunity. I didn't call my father back. Not yet. First, I called a private investigator. A guy named Russo whom my firm used for corporate background checks. He was expensive, discreet, and could find dirt on a saint. I need a full financial autopsy on Robert and Linda Miller, I told him. And Brandon and Tiffany Evans. Assets, liabilities, liens, credit scores, employment history. Everything. You got it, Ms. Miller. Give me 48 hours. 2 days later, a secure PDF landed in my inbox. I opened it with a cup of black coffee in hand. What I read was shocking, even for me. My parents weren't just struggling. They were financially insolvent. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house 3 years ago, presumably to fund Tiffany's wedding and initial expenses. Then, a year ago, they took out a high-interest home equity line of credit, HELOC. The house was appraised at $350,000. They owed $345,000. They had zero equity. And they were 4 months behind on payments. The bank had already issued a notice of default. Foreclosure was weeks away. But the real horror show was Brandon and Tiffany. Brandon had been fired from 3 jobs in 4 years. The report noted suspicion of inventory theft at his last warehouse gig, though no charges were filed, likely because the company didn't want the bad PR. He was currently working as a shift manager at a logistics center, making barely above minimum wage. Tiffany? She had never worked a day since the wedding. Not one. The report showed massive credit card debt in her name, Nordstrom, Sephora, luxury baby boutiques, all maxed out and in collections. But here was the kicker: the report showed a series of transfers from my father's retirement account to Brendan's checking account. $5,000 here. $2,000 there. My parents had drained their 401k to pay for Brendan and Tiffany's living expenses. They had incurred massive tax penalties for early withdrawal. They had literally set their future on fire to keep Tiffany warm. And now, the fire was burning the house down. I closed the laptop. I felt a strange mixture of validation and disgust. I wasn't dealing with a family anymore, I was dealing with a parasite and its host. The host was dying, and the parasite was looking for a new body to latch onto. Me. I called my father back. Meredith? He answered on the first ring, breathless. Oh, thank God. Thank God you called. I got your message, I said, my voice neutral. You said you're losing the house. It's a misunderstanding with the bank, he lied. We just need a bridge loan. Just to get caught up. Once Brandon gets his promotion. Dad, I cut him off. Stop lying. I know about the second mortgage. I know about the helic. I know Brandon isn't getting a promotion. Silence. Heavy, terrified silence. How do you know? It's my job to know things, I said. You want to talk? Fine. But we do it on my terms. Patrick and I are coming to Ohio next weekend. We'll meet for dinner. Neutral ground. The aviary. The aviary? Meredith, we can't afford that. I'm paying, I said. Bring Mom. Bring Tiffany and Brandon. I want everyone there. Okay, he sounded relieved, pathetic. Okay, honey. We'll be there. We can't wait to see you. I hung up. Patrick walked into my office. You're going back. I am. To save them? I turned my chair to look out at the Chicago skyline. No. To foreclose on them. We flew into Ohio on a Friday. We stayed at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, miles away from my parents' crumbling suburban home. I needed the distance. I needed the luxury as a shield. Before the dinner, I had a meeting with a local real estate attorney, an old law school buddy of Patrick's named Harrison. Here's the situation, I told Harrison, sliding Russo's report across the desk. My parents are defaulting on their mortgage. The bank is First Ohio Trust. I want to buy the note. Harrison whistled. You want to become your parents' lender? I want to own the debt, I corrected. I want the legal right to the property. Can you facilitate a purchase of the distress note from the bank? My firm does this with commercial properties all the time. I'll pay off the arrears and buy the principal debt at face value. The bank will be happy to get a non-performing loan off their books without the hassle of foreclosure proceedings. I can do it, Harrison nodded. I'll set up an LLC so your name doesn't appear on the paperwork immediately. Phoenix Holdings LLC? Perfect, I smiled. Phoenix Holdings. Because I rose from the ashes of that house. By the time I walked into the aviary that Saturday night, I wasn't just Meredith the daughter. I was Meredith, the CEO of Phoenix Holdings LLC, the owner of my parents' mortgage, and the woman who held their fate in her manicured hands. But they didn't know that. They just saw a rich daughter they thought they could manipulate one last time. I sat down at the table. I watched Tiffany smirk. I watched Brandon sweat. And I waited for the show to begin. We are back at the table. The folder is sitting there between the centerpiece and the bread basket. My father is staring at it like it's a bomb. Tiffany is looking at me with that smirk that I wanted to slap off her face. Open it, I repeated. My father reached out with a trembling hand and opened the manila folder. Inside wasn't a check, as he had clearly hoped. It was a copy of the notice of default from the bank and a printout of his drained 401k balance. His face turned gray. Meredith, where did you get this? Does it matter? I took a sip of water. I know everything, Dad. I know you haven't paid the mortgage in 4 months. I know you cashed out your retirement to pay off Tiffany's credit cards. I know you're 30 days away from the sheriff putting a padlock on the front door. We were doing it for the family, my mother cried out, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Tiffany needed help. She has 2 children. And whose fault is that? I asked. Did I force her to sleep with Brandon? Did I force her to have a second child when they couldn't afford the first one? Hey! Brandon spoke up, trying to sound tough. We're doing the best we can. The economy is tough. The economy is fine, Brandon, Patrick interjected smoothly. Unemployment is at a record low. You just keep getting fired for stealing. Brandon's mouth snapped shut. He looked at Tiffany, panic in his eyes. He didn't know I knew about the theft. Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. Okay, fine. So we're broke. Is that what you wanted to hear, Meredith? You wanted to humiliate us? Congratulations. You win. Look at you, with your diamond ring and your designer bag. You have everything. I worked for everything, I corrected. Whatever, she rolled her eyes. But here's the thing, sis. You might have money, but you don't have a legacy. You're barren. The word hung in the air. Barren. It was a cruel, archaic word. But, Tiffany continued, her voice taking on a sickeningly sweet tone, I have a solution. A proposal. I raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You pay off the house, Tiffany said, leaning forward. You pay off Mom and Dad's mortgage. You pay off Brandon's car. You clear our debts. It's probably, what, pocket change for you? And in exchange? I asked, genuinely curious about the depths of her delusion. In exchange, Tiffany smiled, patting her belly. I'll let you adopt this baby. The table went silent. Even my mother looked shocked. Tiffany? Think about it, Mom, Tiffany said, not breaking eye contact with me. I don't need a third kid. Brandon and I are drowning. Meredith wants a baby desperately. She can't have one. I make beautiful babies. It's a win-win. We get a fresh start financially, she gets her kid. And the baby stays in the family. It has the Miller genes. I stared at her. I felt like I was looking at an alien species. She was selling her unborn child. She was bartering a human being for debt relief. You want to sell me your baby? I clarified. Adoption, she corrected. Open adoption. We'd still be in his life, obviously. We're the biological parents. But you'd raise him. You'd pay for everything. College, clothes, all that. And we'd be, like, the cool aunt and uncle. She looked at Patrick, fluttering her eyelashes. Think about it, Patrick. A healthy, baby boy. No doctors, no injections. Just a transaction. Patrick looked at me. I could see the vein in his temple throbbing. He was a lawyer. He dealt with criminals for a living. But this? This was a new level of depravity. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice eerily calm. You slept with my fiancé. You stole my wedding. You lived off my parents until you bled them dry. And now, you want me to buy your child to clean up your mess? It's a solution. Tiffany insisted. God, Why do you always have to make me the villain? I'm trying to help you. Help me? I laughed. Tiffany, you aren't helping me. You're trying to parasite off me again. You think because I can't carry a child, I'm desperate enough to take yours? To let you and Brendan stay in my life forever? To have you hovering over me, demanding money every time your son needs something? It's better than having no kids and dying alone with your money, she spat. That was it. That was the core of her worldview. She thought my life was empty because it didn't look like hers. She couldn't conceive that I would rather be childless than be connected to her. I need to use the ladies' room, I said abruptly, standing up. Meredith, wait, my father pleaded. Don't go. We can discuss this. Tiffany didn't mean it like that. I'll be back, I said. I just need a moment. I walked toward the restrooms. I needed to wash my hands. I felt dirty just sitting near them. But as I washed my hands in the marble sink, looking at my reflection, I realized something. Tiffany wasn't just delusional. She was dangerous. She would do anything to survive. And she had one card left to play. I dried my hands and waited. I knew she would follow me. Or worse, she would go after Patrick while I was gone. I checked my phone. I had a text from Patrick. Patrick, she just asked where the bathroom was. She's coming your way. But I think she's waiting for me. Meredith, record it. I waited in the hallway, hidden behind a decorative column. Sure enough, a moment later, I saw Tiffany walking not toward the women's room, but hovering near the entrance to the men's room, waiting. She was hunting. I watched from the shadows of the hallway. It was pathetic, really. Tiffany fixed her hair in the reflection of a framed poster. She pulled her blouse down lower, exposing more cleavage. She checked her teeth. A minute later, Patrick walked out of the men's room. He saw her and stopped. He didn't look surprised, he looked bored. Patrick, Tiffany purred, stepping into his path. She placed a hand on his chest. I wanted to apologize. Meredith is so intense. She gets that from Dad. I'm more like, well, I'm more fun. I pulled up my phone and started recording video from my hiding spot. The angle was perfect. Excuse me, Patrick said, trying to step around her. I need to get back to my wife. Wait, she moved to block him again, pressing her body against his. I was serious back there. About helping you guys. You know, Brendan is useless. He's not a real man like you. You're successful. You're powerful. I like that. She walked her fingers up his lapel. Meredith can't give you what you need, Patrick. A man like you needs a legacy. He needs a woman who works properly. If you catch my drift. Are you hitting on me? Patrick asked, his voice loud enough for the passing waiter to hear. While you are pregnant with your husband's child? While my wife is down the hall? I'm just saying, she lowered her voice to a husky whisper. Surrogacy is expensive and impersonal. But if we connected, maybe the old-fashioned way, nobody would have to know. We could just say it's Brandon's, but you'd know. You'd have a son that's truly yours. And I could make sure you enjoy the process. She leaned in to kiss him. This was the moment. This was the moment she proved she had no bottom. No soul. Patrick caught her wrists and pushed her back. Not gently. He shoved her away with a look of pure revulsion. Don't you dare touch me, he snarled. You are disgusting. Do you understand that? You aren't fun. You aren't delicate. You are a predator. Tiffany looked shocked. I didn't. You think because Meredith can't carry a child, she's less of a woman? Patrick towered over her. Meredith is twice the woman you will ever be. She has integrity. She has class. She has a heart. You're just a vessel for bad decisions. You're hurting my wrists. Tiffany whined, playing the victim immediately. I'm saving you from yourself. Patrick let her go, wiping his hands on his jacket as if she were contagious. And for the record, if Meredith and I never have children, I will still be the happiest man alive because I get to wake up next to her. Now get out of my way before I forget I'm a gentleman. Tiffany scrambled back, her face red with humiliation. I stepped out from behind the column. Bravo, I said, slow clapping. Tiffany spun around. Meredith! He touched me. He tried to grab me. I held up my phone. I have it all on video, Tiff. 4K resolution. The audio is crisp, too. A man like you needs a woman who works properly. Was that the line? Her face went pale white. You were watching? I'm always watching, I said, stepping closer to her. That's the difference between us. You think you're clever because you can manipulate people with tears and sex. I'm clever because I prepare. Please, she whispered, looking at the phone. Please don't show Brandon. He'll kill me. He's been jealous lately. Brandon? I laughed. I don't care about Brandon. I care about the fact that you just tried to prostitute yourself to my husband to clear your debts. You are done, Tiffany. You are finished. Meredith, please. Think of the baby. I am thinking of the baby, I said coldly. That's why I'm going to make sure he knows exactly who his mother is when he grows up. I turned to Patrick. He put his arm around my waist, pulling me close. Ready to finish this? He asked. Oh yes, I said. Let's go buy a house. We walked back to the table. My parents were sitting there in silence, looking terrified. Brandon was checking his phone, oblivious to the fact that his wife just tried to seduce his brother-in-law-to-be, in a twisted way. I sat down. I didn't throw the folder this time. I opened it calmly. I took out a pen. Okay, I said. Here is the deal. Did you discuss the adoption? My mother asked hopefully, looking between me and Tiffany. Tiffany slid into her seat, head down, refusing to look at anyone. She looked sick. We discussed the nature of transactions, I said. And we decided that we aren't interested in buying a baby. However, we are interested in real estate. Real estate? My father asked, confused. I know you're in foreclosure, Dad, I said, laying the paperwork out. I know First Ohio Trust holds the note. Or, they did. Did? As of yesterday morning, First Ohio Trust sold a portfolio of distressed assets to a private equity firm called Phoenix Holdings LLC. I looked him in the eye. I am Phoenix Holdings. My father blinked, processing the information. You bought our mortgage? I bought your debt, I corrected. I own the note. I own the arrears. Which means, effectively, I am your bank now. You don't owe First Ohio Trust anymore. You owe me. A look of relief washed over my mother's face. She actually smiled. Oh, Meredith. Oh, thank God. I knew you would save us. Robert, look. She paid it off. She reached across the table to grab my hand. I pulled it away. Mom, stop, I said sharply. I didn't pay it off. I bought the debt. That means the debt still exists. It's just owed to me. But your family, she stammered. You wouldn't make us pay, right? I mean, we're your parents. And I'm your retirement plan, apparently, I said. But here's the reality. You haven't paid in 4 months. You have zero equity. In the real world, that means foreclosure. You're going to foreclose on us? Brendan spoke up, looking outraged. You can't do that. We live there. My kids live there. You live there rent-free, Brandon, I snapped. While stealing from your employer. Brandon froze. What? I have the PI report, I tapped the folder. Inventory shrinkage at the logistics center. Specifically, high-end electronics. They've been tracking it for months. They know it's you. They just haven't pulled the trigger because they needed concrete proof of where the goods were going. I pulled out a photo the PI had taken. It showed Brendan handing a box to a guy in a pawn shop parking lot. This is proof, I said. Brendan looked like he was going to vomit. You went to the cops? Not yet, I said. But I did send a copy of this file to the CEO of your company this morning. I imagine you'll be getting a call on Monday. Or maybe a visit from the police. Meredith! Tiffany shrieked. How could you? He's the father of my children. He'll go to jail. He should have thought about that before he became a thief, I said calmly. Just like he should have thought about consequences before he slept with my sister. And as for the house, I turned back to my parents. I am not kicking you out today. I am not a monster. But I am a businesswoman. And this is a business meeting. I slid a document across the table. It was a deed in lieu of foreclosure. This is the deal, I said. You sign the deed over to me voluntarily. Phoenix Holdings takes title to the house. In exchange, I forgive the remaining debt. You walk away with zero debt, but zero house. Your credit is saved from a foreclosure judgment, which would ruin you for 7 years. You want our home? My father whispered, tears in his eyes. It's not your home, Dad. It's the bank's home. And now it's mine. You have lived above your means for a decade to fund Tiffany's lifestyle. That ends today. Where will we go? My mother sobbed. That's up to you, I said. I am giving you 30 days to vacate. After that, I'm sending the eviction crew. And Brandon? I'd suggest you use that time to find a good criminal defense lawyer, though I doubt you can afford one. You are evil, Tiffany hissed. You are pure evil. You're doing this just to hurt us. I'm doing this, I said, standing up, because for 30 years, you taught me that money is the only language you speak. You used me for money. You betrayed me for security. So now, I'm using my money to take back my security. I looked at my father. He looked broken. A small part of me, the little girl who wanted him to be proud of her, wanted to relent. Wanted to say, it's okay, I'll fix it. But then I looked at Patrick. I remembered him holding me on the bathroom floor while I cried over a negative pregnancy test. I remembered Tiffany trying to seduce him 10 minutes ago. I hardened my heart. Sign the papers by Monday, I said. Or I proceed with the sheriff's sale. And if I do that, I'll make sure to sue you for the deficiency judgment, which will garnish your Social Security checks until the day you die. It was a bluff. I wouldn't garnish their Social Security, but they didn't know that. Fear was the only tool I had left. Let's go, Patrick, I said. We walked out of the restaurant. I left them sitting there with the ruins of their lives spread out on the white tablecloth. The air outside was cold, but it felt clean. Are you okay? Patrick asked, wrapping his coat around me. No, I admitted. But I will be. I thought it was over. I thought I had one. But I underestimated how messy a cornered animal gets. Monday morning came like a wrecking ball. I was back in Chicago, monitoring the situation remotely. I had alerted Brandon's company on Friday, as promised. I didn't lie. I had sent the email. At 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Aunt Sarah, the one relative who still talked to me and served as my spy. Sarah, police are at your parents' house. They just took Brandon out in handcuffs. Tiffany is screaming in the front yard. It's a scene, Meredith. The whole neighborhood is watching. I closed my eyes. I felt a wave of nausea. I had sent the father of my nephews to jail. It was the right thing to do, Patrick said from the doorway. He knew I would be spiraling. He was stealing mere felonious levels of theft. If he hadn't been caught now, he would have stolen more. Maybe he would have involved Tiffany or the parents. You stopped the bleeding. I feel like the executioner, I whispered. You're the whistleblower, he corrected. There's a difference. Brandon's arrest was the domino that toppled everything else. With him in jail and facing charges for grand larceny, apparently he stole over $50,000 worth of electronics. The household lost its only, meager, income source. My parents panicked. They signed the deed in lieu of foreclosure on Tuesday. They FedExed it to Harrison's office. They had surrendered. The house was mine. But surrender didn't mean silence. Tiffany went on the offensive. Since she had no money, she used the only currency she had, victimhood. She started posting on Facebook. Vague booking at first, then getting specific. I can't believe how cruel family can be. My sister, who is a millionaire in Chicago, just bought our parents' house just to kick us out on the street. She put my husband in jail over a misunderstanding. She hates me because I have children and she can't. Jealousy is a disease. The post started getting traction. People in our small hometown loved a villain, and the evil rich sister from the big city was a perfect trope. Comments started pouring in. Wow, that's heartless. Money changes people. Praying for you, Tiff. I watched the comments roll in. I saw my reputation in my hometown being dragged through the mud. People I went to high school with were calling me a monster. Ignore it, Patrick said. It's just noise. It's not just noise, I said, looking at the screen. She's controlling the narrative. She's making herself the martyr. If I let this stand, I'm the villain forever. So what do you want to do? I want to tell the truth, I said. All of it. The recording? Patrick asked. The recording. The financial records. The timeline. Everything. I sat down at my laptop. I opened a fresh document. I titled it, The Truth About My Family. I wrote for 3 hours. I detailed the wedding betrayal. I detailed the years of financial support. I detailed the theft. I detailed the offer to buy my parents' debt to save their credit. And finally, I uploaded the video. The video of Tiffany in the hallway of the aviary, offering to sleep with my husband for money. I blurred Patrick's face, but Tiffany's was crystal clear. Her voice was unmistakable. A man like you needs a woman who works properly. I posted it. If you thought the fallout from Brandon's arrest was bad, the fallout from that video was nuclear. The internet is a brutal place. But sometimes, it is a glorious instrument of justice. Within hours, my post had been shared hundreds of times. The video of Tiffany trying to seduce Patrick went viral locally. It was undeniable proof of her character. The narrative shifted instantly. The comments on Tiffany's page turned from support to disgust. Girl, you tried to sleep with her husband while pregnant? That is low. She paid your debts for years and you do this? Team Meredith all the way. Tiffany deleted her Facebook account that night. But the digital victory was secondary. The physical reality was that I now owned a house occupied by people who hated me. I sent the official 30-day notice to vacate. Legally, I had to. I offered them $2,000 cash for keys to help them move, a standard landlord tactic to get tenants out without trashing the place. My father called me. He sounded drunk. "How could you?" he slurred. "It's the house you grew up in." "Exactly," I said. "It's the house where you told me I wasn't enough. It's the house where you let Tiffany steal my fiancé. It's a house of bad memories, Dad. I'm selling it. We have nowhere to go," he wept. "Brandon is in jail. Tiffany is, she's a mess. Your mother is sick. Then use the $2,000 I offered to rent an apartment," I said. "Or stay with Aunt Sarah. But you have to leave. I have a contractor coming on the 1st of the month." "You're a cold bitch," he spat. "I wish you were never born. It hurt. I won't lie. Hearing your father say he wishes you were never born cuts through every layer of armor you have. But it also severed the last thread of guilt." "Goodbye, Dad," I said. 30 days passed. I hired a property management company to handle the move-out. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to see them. The property manager, a tough woman named Karen, called me on move-out day. "Ms. Miller," she said. "They're gone. But, you should see the place." "Is it bad?" "They took the copper piping from the basement," she said. "They punched holes in the drywall. And, someone smeared something on the walls in the master bedroom. It looks like, well, it smells like feces." I closed my eyes. Of course. A final act of defiance. A toddler's tantrum. "Document everything," I said. "Deduct it from the cash for keys offer. In fact, rescind the offer. Use the security deposit, oh wait, there isn't one. Just bill them. Add it to the judgment." Also, Karen hesitated. "They left a dog." "A dog?" "Yeah. A golden retriever mix. Locked in the backyard. No water. That broke me more than the house. They abandoned a living creature." "Take him to the vet," I said, my voice shaking. "Bill me. And find him a foster home. Or, send him to Chicago. I'll take him." We named him Phoenix. But the war wasn't over. Because while I was dealing with the house, Tiffany was spiraling into a place darker than I could have imagined. Without a husband, without a home, without a reputation, she became desperate. And desperation makes people reckless. The town turned its back on the Millers. In a small community, reputation is currency, and they were bankrupt. My mother was asked to step down from the church choir. My father was uninvited from his weekly poker game. They were pariahs. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, living off Social Security and food stamps. Tiffany had it the worst. The video of her propositioning Patrick was the nail in her coffin. She couldn't show her face at the grocery store without people whispering. The other moms at Leo's school shunned her. I heard all this from Aunt Sarah. "It's bad, Meredith," Sarah told me. "Tiffany is drinking. Heavily. And she's pregnant. It's dangerous." "I can't save her from herself, Sarah," I said. "I tried. She tried to sleep with my husband." "I know. I'm not asking you to save her. I'm just worried about the kids." The kids. Leo, 7, and the toddler, Sophie, 2. And the unborn baby. They were the innocent casualties in this war. I tried to push it out of my mind. Not my kids, not my problem, I told myself. I have my own life. But then, I had to go back to Ohio one last time. I had to sign the closing papers for the sale of the house. I had renovated it, fixed the pipes, painted the walls, and flipped it for a profit. I was driving past the local elementary school. It was 3 p.m. Dismissal time. I don't know why I stopped. Morbid curiosity? A pull of biology? I parked across the street. I saw the kids pouring out. And then I saw Leo. He looked just like Brandon. Dark hair, lanky frame. But he looked neglected. His clothes were too small. His sneakers were worn out. He was walking with his head down, shoulders hunched. He stood by the pickup loop, waiting. Other kids got picked up by moms in SUVs. Leo waited. And waited. 20 minutes passed. The buses left. The teachers started looking concerned. Finally, a rusted sedan pulled up. It was my father's car. Tiffany wasn't driving. My dad was. But before Leo could get in, a group of older boys walked past him. I saw one of them shove a phone in Leo's face. They laughed. They pointed. Leo shrank back. I saw him wipe his eyes. He was crying. The boys were mocking him. Probably showing him the video of his mother. Or news of his father's arrest. My heart shattered. I gripped the steering wheel. That boy did nothing wrong. He was 7 years old. And he was carrying the weight of his parents' sins. I watched my father usher Leo into the car and drive away. I sat there for a long time. The satisfaction of revenge, which had burned so bright for months, suddenly felt cold and ashy in my mouth. I had won. I had destroyed them. But looking at that little boy crying on the sidewalk, I realized that my victory had a body count. And the bodies were innocent children. That night at the hotel, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Leo's face. Patrick, I whispered in the dark. We have to do something. About what? The kids. They're suffering. Leo, he looked broken. Patrick sighed and turned on the lamp. He looked at me with tired, loving eyes. Meredith, you can't save everyone. You protected yourself. That was the goal. But at what cost? I sat up. I destroyed their safety net. Yes, the parents are toxic. But the kids. I took their home. I put their dad in jail. I ruined their mom's reputation. I did that. They did that, Patrick corrected. You just revealed the truth. Does it matter? I asked. The result is the same. Leo is being bullied. He's poor. He has no chance. So what do you want to do? Give them the money back? No, I said. I'm not giving Tiffany a cent. She'll just spend it on booze or bail. I want to help the kids directly. The next day, I met with the school principal. I explained that I was the aunt. I paid off Leo's overdue lunch account, $40. I set up a fund for his field trips and school supplies, anonymous. Then, I went to a trust attorney. I want to set up an irrevocable trust, I said. Beneficiaries are Leo Evans, Sophie Evans, and the unborn child. The funds are for education, healthcare, and housing only. The parents have zero access. The trustee will be a third party. I funded it with the profit I made from flipping my parents' house. $50,000. It was poetic justice. The equity of the house they lost would pay for their grandchildren's future. I felt a little better. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sarah. She was crying. Meredith, it's your mom. What happened? She had a stroke. Massive. She's in the ICU. They don't think she's going to make it. The news hit me like a physical blow. Not grief, exactly. But shock. The permanence of it. I'm coming, I said. I drove to the hospital. The smell of antiseptic triggered a memory of when I broke my arm as a kid and my mom sat with me for hours reading stories. It was one of the few times I had her all to myself. I walked into the ICU room. It was crowded. My father was there, looking like a ghost. Tiffany was there, huge with pregnancy, smelling like stale cigarettes. They looked up when I entered. You came, my father whispered. I came, I said. I looked at the woman in the bed. She looked tiny. Frail. Wires and tubes everywhere. The machine beeped rhythmically. She can hear you, the nurse said gently. But she can't speak. I walked to the bedside. I took her hand. It was cold. I waited for an epiphany. I waited for her to squeeze my hand, to look at me with apology in her eyes, to signal that she loved me. But she didn't. She just lay there. Tiffany stood on the other side of the bed. We locked eyes. Are you happy? Tiffany whispered aggressively. You stressed her out. You caused this. Tiffany, stop, my father said weakly. No! Tiffany hissed. She stole our house. She put Mom in an early grave. I looked at Tiffany. Really looked at her. She was pathetic. She was lashing out because she was terrified. I didn't cause this, I said calmly. Life caused this. Choices caused this. I looked back at my mom. Goodbye, Mom, I whispered. I hope you find peace. Because you never found it here. I let go of her hand. She died 3 hours later. She never woke up. She never apologized. And I realized, standing in that parking lot, that I had to be okay with that. I had to forgive her, not for her sake, but so I could stop carrying the poison. The funeral was awkward. That's the only word for it. I paid for it, of course. My father had $40 in his checking account. I paid for the casket, the plot, the service. It was my final check to the Bank of Meredith. At the graveside, after the guests had left, it was just me, Patrick, my dad, and Tiffany. Tiffany was sitting on a folding chair, looking exhausted. She hadn't yelled at me today. She just looked defeated. I walked over to her. We need to talk, I said. She looked up. What is there to talk about? You won. We lost. Mom is dead. I set up a trust, I said. She blinked. What? For the kids. Leo, Sophie, and the baby. There is $50,000 in an account. It pays for their school, their clothes, their doctors. Tiffany's eyes widened. Can I access it for rent? No, I said. You can't touch a dime. It goes directly to the vendors. But it means you don't have to worry about school supplies or medical bills. She looked down at her hands. Why? After everything I did? Because they are innocent, I said. And because I refused to let them grow up the way we did, pitted or ignored. I took a breath. And there's one more thing. I bought a condo. 3 bedrooms. Near the school. Tiffany looked up, hope flaring in her eyes. It's in my name, I said sternly. I own it. But you and Dad and the kids can live there. Rent-free. Really? She started to cry. Conditions apply, I raised a finger. 1, you get a job. Any job. Waitress, cashier, I don't care. You contribute. 2. You go to therapy. I'll pay for it. 3. The kids stay in school and keep their grades up. 4. Brendan does not live there when he gets out. He finds his own way. But, he's my husband. He's a felon and a bad influence. He can visit, but he doesn't live there. Those are my terms. Take it or leave it. Tiffany looked at the grave. Then she looked at me. For the first time, I saw humility in her eyes. I'll take it, she whispered. Thank you, Meredith. I don't deserve it. No, you don't, I agreed. But Leo does. 3 years later. I am sitting on the patio of my home in Chicago. It's a beautiful summer day. Inside, I can hear Patrick singing a silly song. Who's my pretty girl? Who's the princess? I smile. We did it. We have a daughter. Her name is Hope. We used a surrogate, a wonderful woman who carried our biological child. It was expensive, it was emotional, but the moment I held her in the delivery room, all the pain of the last decade vanished. She has Patrick's eyes and my chin. She is perfect. My phone buzzes. It's an email from the trustee in Ohio. Update on Evan's family trust, Leo, straight as. Joined the soccer team. Sophie, started preschool. Tiffany, still employed at the diner. Attending AA meetings weekly. I smile. It's working. Tiffany isn't my best friend. We don't braid each other's hair. But we are civil. We FaceTime once a month so I can see the nephews, and she can see Hope. She looks better. Tired, but sober. Working for a living has given her some dignity. My dad watches the kids while she works. He looks older, sadder without my mom, but he seems grateful for the roof over his head. I own the roof. I hold the keys. Some people might say I'm controlling. That I'm using money to play God. Maybe I am. But I prefer to think of it as breaking the cycle. My money isn't enabling them anymore, it's structuring them. It's forcing them to be responsible. I hear the patio door slide open. Patrick walks out, holding Hope in his arms. She's giggling. Hey, Mama, Patrick says, kissing my cheek. What are you thinking about? I look at my daughter. I look at the man who stood by me when I was broken. I look at the life I built from the ashes of betrayal. I'm thinking, I say, taking Hope into my arms, that living well really is the best revenge. If you liked this story, if you believe that justice is best served cold but with a side of mercy, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, would you have given them the house? Or would you have let them hit rock bottom? I'm Meredith, and this was my story. Thanks for listening. Meredith's journey reminds us that true strength isn't measured by how much we endure, but by how we choose to respond when pushed to our limits. Her story isn't simply about revenge, it's about reclaiming power and establishing boundaries after years of exploitation. While family bonds are sacred to many, they should never become chains that bind us to toxic relationships. Sometimes, the most courageous act of self-love is walking away and building something new from the ashes of betrayal. What makes Meredith's tale so compelling is her evolution from victim to architect of her own destiny. She didn't just survive, she thrived, creating success on her own terms while eventually finding balance between justice and compassion. Her decision to help her nieces and nephews while maintaining firm boundaries demonstrates that healing doesn't require forgiveness without accountability. It shows us that we can protect ourselves while still extending kindness to innocent parties caught in the crossfire. In our own lives, we may face betrayals that shake our foundations, but like Meredith, we always retain the power to rewrite our stories. The path forward might not be perfect or painless, but it can lead to unexpected joy and fulfillment if we remain true to ourselves. Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect your well-being? Comment good if this reflection resonated with you and reminded you of your own strength in challenging times.